Nosferatu is a 2024 horror film written for the screen and directed by Robert Eggers. Now, I'm quite familiar with this director. I've watched The Witch and Northman on the big screen, but I haven't seen The Lighthouse. This film is a passion project of his. He really loves the 1922 German original, which is an unofficial version of the novel. This movie has a lot of hype. You know, there's a big cast, big budget. It's $50 million a maximum. But I gotta say, this movie's a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. The movie, it has immaculate set design, costumes. The acting's really good. I like the camera work. Some good scary moments, but overall the movie is super indulgent. It's a good 45 minutes longer than its original counterpart. A lot of slow moments, a lot of characters just talking. They try to add some new stuff involving the main character of Ellen Hutter, and I didn't quite like the pacing. The pacing was the hardest part. I almost fell asleep about 5 times in this movie, and it wasn't because I was tired. I wasn't the only one, but the movie really dragged in areas that sort of kept things going for certain parts, and I felt the movie wasn't really extreme enough. Like The Witch is one of those great atmospheric sort of horror films that's a lot of stuff off screen, a lot of stuff's implied. This one has a couple of visceral moments, but not quite enough, because honestly we've had plenty of vampire fiction in the last couple of years. You know, Willem Dafoe was in Shadow of the Vampire, Nicholas Hoult was in Renfield. There's been a 1979 remake of Nosferatu. We had Voyage of the Demeter, an entire movie based off one chapter. This movie has some of that. I felt the movie needed more vampire action. It needed more stuff going on. It doesn't really top the 1992 Dracula film. Some parts of the book are missing because it's based mostly off the 1922 film, and it has been a good 100 years since the original film. But I feel like Robert Eggers didn't put enough of a stamp of his own making on this one. There's really no reason why you just can't watch the original film instead. I mean, it is a lot shorter, but I guess it can be comparable to the King Kong remake, where the new King Kong movie, you know, is a lot longer, more indulgent, better visual effects. But, you know, I was never bored with that film. This movie was just a little bit on the, a lot of just, you know, characters milling about, sort of like getting lost in the dark. A lot of characters don't know much about the Nosferatu, so they spend a lot of the time arguing with each other about the existence instead of doing things about it or learning more about it. And characters sort of, you know, spend a lot of time away from each other, and it's supposed to be based off an epistolary novel, so there's a lot of timeline with the whole 6 weeks being far away. It doesn't make sense either timeline wise. But overall, I mean, the movie is gorgeous to look at, and the acting's decent. There's not a lot for the characters to do, and I felt the movie was kind of weak in other areas too, such as, you know, the giant mustache that Count Orlok wears. It makes him look a little goofy, like he's got a giant comb on his face. And, you know, you really can't see Bill Skarsgård's performance at all in that. I felt the movie had some levity with Willem Dafoe. He has a quirky little weirdness to it, and I like that part, but he needed to be upped a little bit more. And the other characters sort of just mill about, and they don't get to do much, and they're very reactive. And it's missing some cool parts from the novel that they don't want to use because it is a remake. So Nosferatu is a decent film. And actually, no, Nosferatu is pretty boring, to be honest. It's Robert Eggers' most indulgent film. He definitely needed to take a step back and make this more of a creepy horror film. This one was more atmospheric, but kind of boring, and it just too sluggish in pace. So I give Nosferatu a 4 out of 10.